Jake. If my parents weren't builders, I guess I never would have heard of barn raising. It happens with Amish people. If somebody needs a new barn, all the nearby farmers come over and build the guy a new barn, and all in one day. I guess what happened today was a clubhouse raising. My parents wanted to start at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. to my parents is like 10 a.m. to normal people. As we pulled into the driveway, I could hardly believe what I saw. The Lindops, Mrs. Ernie, all waiting and waving on the porch. But the biggest surprise was Lily. She came along and nobody made her. She hasn't been grumpy for the last couple days. She's talking to me again. Mr. Lindop went for supplies. Dad set up his workbench in the backyard. He ran a long orange cord to an outlet on the porch and connected the buzzsaw. Then we started building. It was hot. Mrs. Lindop brought out lemonade and iced tea with mint leaves in it. After a while, Nacho and Burke showed up, still half asleep. Their main jobs were to stay out of the way. By lunchtime, the walls were up and the spaces framed for 2 windows and a door. Mrs. Lindop had a picnic set up in the shade of the back porch. Cold cuts, potato rolls, chicken salad, blue corn chips, pickles, olives stuffed with cheese, brownies, watermelon, you name it. Once, as I looked up from my sandwich, I saw a bump ride by. All afternoon we were swimming in sweat. Everybody was dragging but Ernie. He was darting like a squirrel. I swear, from 7 a.m. till the end, I never saw the smile leave his face. By dinner time, the job was almost done. Peaked roof with shingles, hardwood floor. It was beautiful. I want to live here, I said, only half joking. Last came the paint. What color, Ernie? Said my dad. Ernie didn't hesitate. Orange. Everybody made groany smiles. But before you could say, you can't paint a clubhouse orange, Dad said, orange it is. An hour later, one wall to a painter, it was done. A miniature orange house. I take it back, I said. I don't want to live here. Everybody laughed. Ernie loudest of all. I've never seen anyone so happy as that kid. One last thing, my dad said. He went to the truck and came back with a weather vane he had saved from an old job. He screwed it onto the roof. It was a floppy-eared dog with a straight-out tail pointing in the wind direction. Then we all went out for pizza to celebrate. Lily. It was Poppy's idea for me to help build the clubhouse. Here's how it happened. I couldn't wait to tell Poppy about my detective work and citizens' arrests and the new paint job. Telling it was almost as much fun as doing it. As I was blabbing on, I noticed him grinning at the bowl of fudge ripple ice cream in front of me. I looked down. It was a creamy puddle. We laughed. I guess I got carried away, I said. Now he was aiming a smile at me. I asked him what else was funny. Not funny, he said, just nice. What's nice? Something's missing, he said. You know what? Tell me. You haven't mentioned Jake or Goombla this whole time. I thought about it. He was right. In fact, he said, I don't think I've heard those words since you've been telling me about your days with your new friend, Sydney. So what are you saying? I asked him. He took away the puddle bowl and brought me another with 3 scoops. I'm saying I think you've done it. I knew exactly what he meant, but I wanted to hear it in his words. Yeah, what'd I do? You got a life. You're a new Lily. You learned that you could go solo, stand on your own without clinging to your brother. I took a spoonful of fudge ripple. I nodded. Yeah, I guess you're right. He stared at me thinking, how would you like to know? No, not guess. I shrugged. Sure. That clubhouse I heard about, that Jake and your parents are going to rebuild for Jake's new friend, kid named Ernie? Yeah? I said, what about it? I'm thinking maybe you should jump in, help them build it. Why should I said. It's going to be for Jake and his friends, his life. He snapped his fingers. That's the point. It would be a good test for you. Prove yourself that you can spend a day with your brother, with the boys, and walk away on your own 2 feet. Still the new Lily. He took the spoon out of my hand and stole a big gob of my ice cream. What do you think? You gonna do it or wimp out? Afraid you can't pass the test? I didn't wimp out. The next morning, I rode the family truck to Meeker Street. I sweated, lifted, hammered, ate, talked, even laughed at their stupid jokes. Nacho, Burke, Ernie, Jake, the boys. I asked myself, do I still want to be one of them? The answer was no. I prayed they didn't remember that day I yelled after them from my bike. I'm not a girl! The day came and went. At the end of the day, I was still me, still standing on my own 2 feet. The new Lily. I passed the test. Jake. The door was open. The 2 windows were open. Still, it was hot in the clubhouse, but we didn't care. We sat on folding chairs, Ernie, me, Burke, Nacho. Our lemonade sat on a TV tray along with a bowl of munchies that Ernie's mom kept coming in to refill. She was funny. Every time she came, she knocked on the door and said, "May a lowly female have permission to enter the grand palace of Major Dudes?" Ernie acted all serious and granted her permission and then said, "Females are welcome, Mom." We sat and munched and talked and just chilled out in the coolest clubhouse in town. We talked a lot about school, which starts next week. Then Ernie said, "Let's play Revolution. You have to tell something about yourself that the rest of us don't know." We said, "Okay." Nacho went first. He told us about a time in third grade when he sang "God Bless America" for the class and everybody was laughing because his fly was open. Burke told about the time he cut a bug in half. That was years ago and he just remembered it the other day and he really feels bad about it. I took a deep breath and told them about the first sleepwalk to the train station. Their mouth and eyes were agape. When I finished, I never heard such silence in my life. Finally, Ernie reached over and touched my arm. "You're lucky," he said. Nobody said anything else. We were waiting for Ernie's revelation. It took a while before we realized he had already started. He was holding out his hand, palm up, and the middle was a mark, round, smaller than a dime, whitish. I wondered why he was showing us. "Blister?" I said, remembering our blister lies. He shook his head, still smiling. "So what?" said Nacho. "Scar," said Ernie. And then he told us. Back at his last school in Gary, Indiana, there was a kid who zeroed in on him. The kid would trip him and knock his books to the ground and make his life miserable for him. The kid was already smoking, and one day he shoved Ernie against a wall and said, "I heard he'd been bad-mouthing me." Which of course Ernie wasn't, but the kid was just setting him up. "I'll teach you to bad-mouth me," the kid says, and he grabs Ernie's hand and snuffs out his cigarette right there in the palm. "One day you asked me why we moved away from Gary and came here," he said. "That's why." "I don't blame you for leaving that dump," said Burke. "It wasn't my choice," said Ernie. "My parents made me. I tried to hide the burn, but it got infected and the school nurse saw it and sent me to the hospital, and that's when my parents found out." I was shocked. "You mean after all that, you didn't want to move?" Ernie shook his head. "I had friends. Most of the kids were nice." He laughed. "I wasn't going to let one rotten apple run me out of town." We all clinked glasses and drank to that and thought, "Goobers have guts." But Ernie said, holding up his finger, "That doesn't mean I'm sorry, because if we didn't move, I never would have met you guys." He was doing it again, smiling and hard staring at each of us. I swallowed. I clinked the glass. "We're glad too, Ernie." Ernie took a swig. "I'll tell you, it was coming down to the wire. I was getting nervous at the prospect of starting a new school without having a single friend." "Now you have 3, said Nacho. "Right," said Ernie. "Too bad it's not 4. We knew who he was referring to. "I guess Bump is busy looking for more goobers." I almost gagged my mouth full of corn chips. For a minute, you could practically hear the ice melting in the lemonade. Sooner or later, somebody had to say something. I swallowed. "He's probably away on vacation. Or maybe," he snapped his fingers, "he just can't bring himself to be friends with a goober." "Why do you keep saying that?" said Burke. "You're not a goober," said Nacho. "Sure I am." He looked around, he laughed. "Whatever it is." He looked at me. "What exactly makes a goober anyways?" Dead silence. I finally choked out, "You guys are so stupid. There's no such thing as goobers." Ernie just smiled and chuckled. "And I bet soup doesn't really mean cool, does it?" More silence. Enough of this, I thought. "Hey," I said, "anybody going out for football this year?" Lily. "Sydney slept over last night. She was everything Anna Matsuoka was not. No makeup, no adoring herself in the mirror, no hogging the pizza or bed space, no complaining, but lots of burping. We had a contest. She won. I was laughing too hard to care about Lucy. We spent a couple hours in the cooler room, armed with markers. There's no empty space left on the walls. She saw every nook and cranny of the house except the basement. A couple days ago, my dad installed a lock on the basement door. He doesn't tell me why, only that if I'm dumb enough to break through and go down, I do so on pain of death. I told him I better not be locked out for long because my train stuff is down there. We wound up watching TV from the bed and eating M&Ms. The last time I looked at the clock, it said 1:30. I guess we scared Jake away. He spent the night at Poppy's. We were zombies heading over to Sydney's house this morning to pick up Devin for the day. He usually wants to head straight for the playground. Not today. He wanted to hang out at my house. Jealous about Sydney's overnight, I guess. One thing that happened that drained some of the juice out of our super great overnight. Devin hid in the mudroom closet. No big deal, except we thought he was lost, maybe unconscious, maybe wandering down the street, maybe whatever. We called and called, no answer. Sydney was frantic, ready to cry, when we found them all grinning in the closet. The whole thing made me a little sad. It reminded me of the times when Jake and I couldn't play hide and seek because we always knew where each other was. Jake. I slept over at Poppy's last night. Lily was having her new best pal overnight, so I escaped. Or at least I thought I escaped, until I had a dream. I'm standing in the open, just me and empty blue sky, and I look up and I see Lily falling. She's coming from really high, like above the blue, but I know instantly that she's coming right down on me, and I hold out my arms and I catch her, and she laughs and laughs. We don't stop laughing. Lily. Sydney and Devin got shipped off to her Uncle Bob's for a few days, so this morning I biked over to Poppy's. I love having the keys to two houses. We're having a heat wave, but Poppy's house is always cool. At times like this, I wish he didn't work all day, but at least he's got we now. I talked to him too. I talked him into it. We do sword fights and ping pong and stuff. It's not much fun by itself, but it's okay. The only thing I don't like is it's hard to cheat with we. I did some bowling for a while, then beat myself in tennis. I made a sardine sandwich with onion and mustard. Poppy says it's a big world. I need to try new stuff. Then I headed to the basement to play darts. It occurred to me to go out back and weed Poppy's flower garden. It's his least favorite job. I was torn because I wanted to do it and surprise him, but I'm terrified of that big black devil dog in the next yard. I look out the back window. I didn't see the dog. I opened that back door and peeked. No dog. I slunk into the yard, ready to bolt back in. No dog. I pulled as many weeds as I could hold on to two hands and ran back inside. TV was boring, every channel. I started to talk to myself. I kept thinking about Jake telling me I should come over to the orange clubhouse. On the TV, cartoon dog was chasing a cartoon squirrel around a cartoon tree. That's it, I said out loud. Clicked off the TV. I missed Sydney. I was so bored, I was ready to look up Anna Matsuo. I must have backed out the front door because when I pulled it shut and turned around, I found myself staring at the devil dog. He was sitting at the foot of the porch step, right next to my bike. A bird was chirping somewhere, and the street was all sunny and nice, but my world stopped at the beast. Then I heard something that wasn't the bird chirping. It was so low I didn't realize at first what it was. Then I did. It was the dog growling. It was hard to explain, but a low, soft growl was more terrifying than a roar. I never got so much attention in my life as I did from those two little brown eyes. They didn't blink, only stared. The big black head never moved, and neither did I. I froze. Suddenly I had to pee. I clenched up. Poppy's front door locks automatically when you close it. The key was in my pocket, but I knew that if I so much as twitched my finger, that monster would be leaping at my throat. Jake. Another scorcher. It was probably hotter in the clubhouse than outside, but we didn't want to leave. Besides lemonade, Mrs. L was bringing us homemade ice cube popsicles, grape and orange. We had our shirts off except for Ernie. He's no scrawnier than the rest of us, just more modest, I guess. We were just talking about school starting soon and all the usual junk, but my mind was on a different track from my mouth. I kept looking at Ernie with his Daffy Duck t-shirt and his white smear of sunblock on his sunburned nose and his clumsiness and his ever-needing cheeriness, and I realized he was the same as always. He fit the definition of a goober as perfectly as ever. He hadn't changed at all. I had. We had. Forget what I said a couple pages ago. Goobers do exist. They are what they are, which is pretty much what I thought they were, what Bumps thinks they are. But Bump is missing the point. It's okay to be a goober. Beneath every goober is a kid, a person. Maybe he's not what you call regular, but so what? Is that a bad thing? Turns out goobers, this goober anyway, make great friends. I'll take a goober over a death ray any day. The guys were talking about school activities, and Ernie was saying he wants to join the band and learn to play the trombone. As he was demonstrating trombone playing, he knocked his lemonade off the TV tray. As he dove for his falling glass, he knocked over the others. We all laughed and got down on our knees, and I was picking up an ice cube off the new hardwood floor. I had a sudden feeling. It had nothing to do with the ice cubes or lemonades or friends or clubhouses. It had to do with my sister Lily. I can't describe it, except to say for the first time in a long time that special sense was back, what we used to call Goombla. If the wordless feeling could speak, it would have whispered, "She needs you." The next thing I knew, I was flying down the streets on my bike and busting into Poppy's driveway. The big black dog from next door was blocking the front steps, just sitting there. Lily was on the porch. She looked like a statue, like some alien Paralyzer Ray had zapped her. The dog didn't bother to get up when he saw me. He just swung his big black head. I knew he lived next door, and I knew Lily was terrified of him, even though Poppy keeps telling her he's just a big baby. The dog barked at me. I have to admit, it didn't sound like a friendly bark, more like a don't come an inch closer bark. Then the dog got up on all fours. He barked at me some more. His head bounced with every bark like a recoiling pistol. This dog wants to kill me, I thought. I don't know how long I stood there staring back and forth from the dog to Lily. Then I was aware of two things. I was moving, I was thinking, I'm gonna die. And then the dog was coming up to me, and its bark was different, and it was jumping at me and licking my face, and I knew Poppy was right. It was just a big baby. Lily was still on the porch, still frozen. I went to her. Her eyes were horror movie wide. I cupped her shoulders. It's okay, I said. She flinched. The dog was licking her hand. Then I felt her relax. Tears came. She sagged into me. Her voice was muffled against my shirt. You knew, didn't you? Yeah, I said. I knew. Lily. Devon Park is going public. Devon finally got tired of having a playground all to himself. He whined to Mrs. Addison, I want playmates. The Addisons are giving him more than playmates. They've added a sandbox and a sliding board to the playground. We made a sign. Grand opening Saturday. Grand Devon Park. Little kids only. I went to tell Poppy all about it today. There was a monster in the kitchen. The cantaloupe. Right there. It had been for half the summer. Is there a word for worse than rotten? It was soft and moldy. As Poppy pressed a finger into it, it made a slurpy sound. I hung back by the fridge. My stomach was looking for a way out. I told you, said Poppy, you can turn your back on it, ignore it, forget it, but it's still there, right where you left it. Just like your Goomba. My Goomba isn't sickening, I pointed out. Before I could stop him, he pulled his new long knife from the drawer and sliced the cantaloupe in half. Look at the smelly orange mush. One whiff, and I was out of there. Let somebody else tell him about Devon Park. Hey, he called, what about some ice cream? Fudge Ripple. I charged out the door. No thanks, I called. Not hungry. Jake. Mom and Dad took me to the grand opening of Lily's friend's little brother new playground. They wouldn't tell me why. Nacho and Burke and Ernie were there too. Everybody was staring at a big humpy something under a tarp. When Mom and Dad whipped off the tarp, suddenly I knew why I was there and what Dad had been working on in the basement. It was a wooden locomotive, red and blue and silver. Letters running from the headlamp to engineer's cat said, California Zypher. My parents held off the swarming little kids so my sister and I could sit in the cab first. Lily was crying. I might have too, if I was a girl. It's our dream train, she said. Our birthday train, I said. I closed my eyes. I was back in the Moffat tunnel. I could hear the click of train wheels. Lily poked me. She was grinning. Smell anything? I sniffed. Pickles! We laughed. I told her I was sorry I missed our birthday sleepwalk at the train station. I told her if it would make her feel better, she could punch me one time to make up for it. She did. I invited her to come to the new clubhouse. She said she has better things to do. I told her Bump is gone. I told her we're not the Death Rays anymore. She could bring Sydney and Devon. She said why would she want to hang out with a bunch of boys? I reminded her that a couple of months ago she said she wasn't a girl. She punched me again. The next day we tried to play hide and seek. We couldn't. Lily said, I ate them. Before I could say, where are my pumpkin seeds? Looks like we're back on track. And it feels like the end of this book, so... Lily, not so fast, Buster. Before we wrap this thing up, one thing's gonna change. I don't want to hear you tell me one more time, ever, that you're older than me. Jake, it's only 11 minutes. Lily, it feels like 11 years. As long as you have a death grip on the big 11, I'm never going to feel really equal, so give 'em up. All 11 minutes. Now. Okay, but only if you stop stealing my pumpkin seeds. Deal? Deal. Okay, let's do the last chapter together. Since now we're finally really, truly, totally equal. Jake, sister approved. Jake and Lily, twins. Da-da-da-da-da-da.